Yep, it's being live streamed. All right, let me mute this because it's going to be delayed. All right. I'm almost there. And I need to edit the video. I want to grab this. Come back in here. Oops, nope. Come back in here. Paste that in. Save. So close. Copy that link. Go back here. Edit the post.
So many beautiful statue Mercury that's to the museum. Overview.
Okay. This is not the most compelling of meeting content so far. But here we go. Let me go back to Zoom. And maybe maximize? Sure, why not? Okay. I'm ready. And it's only like 8 minutes late. That's really awful. I'm really sorry for that. So welcome to this meeting of Carpinteria Birdwatchers for this Thursday, June 22nd. Now that we're back to meeting in person here at the library, but we're trying to keep doing it via Zoom. There's like more moving parts and I got a little behind the curve today. Thank you to Brody for solving the video monitor problem. He had the key technical skill. Oh, you have to push the button on the monitor to turn it on. So hello everybody. I hope you've been out bird watching. I'm pleased to see so many people here in the room. On Zoom, you can't necessarily see. I'll turn it around later. But we got a whole bunch of people here, which is great. I attribute all of that to Tom's zucchini bread, I think it is at the back. I haven't tried it. Yep. You're getting applause for your zucchini bread, Tom. I'll ask to unmute Tom. See if I can get him unmuted. Yeah, so let's do announcements really quick so we can get on to the bird content. This Saturday, we will have our monthly outing, but I unfortunately will not be there. I'm helping my daughter move in San Diego. But Tom and Laurel will be there. And based on recent experience at our outings, I think there will be a large supply of birding expertise available. So if you're learning and you want people you can ask questions, there will be people there you can ask questions of. Oh yes, and it's at Santa Monica Creek. So we've done it a few times before. This is the bike path that runs like you go to the west end of El Caro Lane in Carpinteria and you park there and you can walk through onto the bike path. And I thought it went well with the theme. The theme of tonight's meeting is backyard bird watching. So you're basically bird watching in people's backyards when you're walking along that creek. So I thought that was a good choice for that. Okay, and I have a text from Tom. Oh, I have to let them back in. This is, again, we just admit everybody. Yeah, apologies to those just joining the Zoom meeting. I've been a little bit pulled in different directions here. Okay, so that will be happening this Saturday at 8 a.m. And there's details on the carpbirdwatchers.org website, so you can go there if you want to get directions, more specific directions. And then one more announcement. We are going to take a break, at least for next month and probably for the next 2 months. So we won't have a meeting in July or a group outing. I mean, you're welcome to go bird watching every day of the month if you want, but we won't be doing it as a group. And then probably also in August, we will not have a meeting and an outing. But we'll come back strong in September. And during that time that we're having that downtime, we're going to put out a survey to the mailing list. So if you're not on the mailing list, again, go to the website and get yourself on the mailing list, carpbirdwatchers.org. And we just want to kind of gather opinions about where do we go next. Hopefully we're more or less out of the pandemic phase. We're back to in-person meetings and in-person outings, but a lot of people still like the Zoom meetings. We've got lots of people participating that way. So we just want to kind of get people's views on that and kind of plan out how we're going to do things going forward and what our sort of overall mission is. And that kind of stuff. So look forward to that over the next few months. Any other announcements? Yeah. Oh, snowy plovers, thank you. So there was a question asked in the pre-meeting chaos as I was trying to get everything set up about the snowy plovers at Carpinteria State Beach. So as a lot of you already know, for the last few years, snowy plovers, this adorable little shorebirds about this big, have nested at the Carpinteria State Beach, right by the campground, right by the mouth of Carpinteria Creek, which was very exciting. They hadn't nested there in 60 years, so that the population was doing well enough to expand was really thrilling. And we had docenting and we had all kinds of fun stuff. This year, with the winter storms and the reconfiguration of the beach, the situation seems to be that beach is no longer physically conducive to snowy plover nesting. They actually made nesting attempts early on in the season, I want to say in May. And there were 3 attempts, but all 3 failed. They were all washed away by high tides. So the snowy plovers kind of got the message and said, okay, we're going to go lay our eggs on a different beach. So there have been some snowy plovers hanging out there. I haven't seen any there the last couple times I've gone down there. Hopefully, over time, it's a very dynamic environment down there with sand and stuff moving around. With any luck, by next year, it'll be back to a situation where they have that chunk of beach, that they're able to nest on again. And so fingers crossed, they will continue to try to do that. But for this year, we don't have any snowy plover nesting on the beach down there. Okay, any other questions? Have people been doing exciting bird watching during the last month? Yes, Tom.
I saw a green heron at the marsh yesterday. It was so cool. It was on a bare branch. It probably had been feeding down there, and it was preening. And you could see every angle of it, how clearly, the marking and putting its head down and preening, so you could see the blue green. It was very cool.
Yeah, green herons are exciting birds to see. I've seen them a few times in the marsh, but I've many more times visited the marsh without seeing them. Like, they're hard to actually, yeah. So when you see one, it's definitely special.
And I just stood there still staring at it for about 5 minutes. And several people walked by and I'm like, what are you seeing? Taking pictures. Don't care. Just high enough up, but no leaves around it, just a bare.
You could actually see it. Yeah. It was an excellent bird.
That was exciting. Made my week.
Awesome. Because I've used up so much time with being disorganized, I'm just going to mush on through and get to the meeting content. Because we actually have 3 different little segments that I want to get through for tonight's meeting. So first, we're going to have a discussion of, so the overall topic of the meeting is backyard bird watching. And I decided explicitly to take a step back from the more exotic, far-flung birding travel. Like the last meeting was about birding in New Zealand. And, I went on a partially birding related trip to the East Coast in the last few weeks. That was exciting to me. It's the first time I traveled for bird watching in a very long time. But I wanted to kind of bring it back and just focus on local birds, the birds we have around here. So with that said, I'll move on to that. The first section is going to be just me talking about some of the more common species that I see in my backyard and just sort of the experience I've had doing backyard bird watching here in Carpinteria. Then we're going to switch over and have a remote session where Tom and Laurel are going to give us a guided tour here on the Zoom screen of their backyard, which blows my backyard away in terms of birding excitement. They've got a really amazing feeder setup that I'm sure they'll be able to share, and that'll be fun to see. And then we'll have a break, and everybody who hasn't had the zucchini bread can try the zucchini bread. And then we'll come back. And then in the last section, again, in keeping with the theme, I'm going to have just a very beginner-friendly, pretty quick discussion of, if I'm new to bird watching, how do I do it? Let's say I want to go bird watching in my backyard, and I'm not sure exactly how. What are the most basic pieces of information I would need to have? So I'm going to work on talking about that a little bit at the end. So, if you find that redundant, a lot of you I know are pretty advanced bird watchers. You can stick around and correct me when I get something wrong, but if you just want to, bail at that point, you can just leave. Okay, so any questions before we jump into the discussion? Anything about the meeting today? Okay, great, let's go. This is also new and different. Like, again, I can do it at home, and I can do it. Oh, I got to keep admitting people. That's unfortunate. So Tom and or Laurel, are you live in the Zoom meeting? I see you're muted, Laurel, which is probably for
Yeah, we're in it, but you have to let, Tom will get on again. We got bopped off, both of us.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
He'll try and get on again.
Okay.
okay.
And I think Laurel, you're already a co-host, I think, right?
No,
No.
you didn't make me one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're now a co-host.
Okay.
And so hopefully that means you can admit him if push comes to
Yeah.
shove. I'm going to be doing the, the presentation stuff, so I'll probably have a hard time seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
And those of you on Zoom, I apologize for kind of treating you as, poor relations that I'm not really interacting with much. We've got a room full of people here, which is great. But I also want you to feel like, members of the meeting, and it's exciting to see you all, and I'm happy that you're here. Like, hi, Carla, I see you. So on we go. I'm going to share my screen. And as usual, I will narrate what I'm doing because I can't do it without narrating. I think that's the window I want. And you know what, actually. So before I go to the actual birds, I wanted to share this. So in eBird, there is this cool feature. And again, very beginner friendly in tonight's discussion. So not everybody wants the hassle of interacting with eBird or submitting their birding checklist. But if you do, there's this very cool feature where it'll organize all your submissions and you can drill down and look at here's all your submissions for this location or that location. And it will actually produce these this kind of bar chart for you, this histogram that shows you. So this is just for one eBird location. This is the location, my personal location labeled Mesa Lane backyard. So this is the backyard at my house. And Steve Colwell, who the person who I could not beat in the county big year competition last year, the birding prodigy. He's quite the impressive birder. Anyway, he commented to me one day when we were out birding, like, "Oh yeah, I see, John, you're doing some kind of a long-term study. You put in a lot of these checklists from Mesa Lane backyard." I'm like, "Yeah, no, it's not a study. It's just I want to keep my checklist streak alive in eBird. I recently passed 2,000 days with a checklist every day. So it's like I don't want to have that gap. So when I am lazy and are just busy, I go in my backyard for 10 minutes and watch birds. So I get a checklist on that day. But the result of that is I now have this really fun data that shows me for all those checklists, what are the birds that show up and what is their distribution throughout the year. It also shows me that the third week in January and the first week in March, I've never had a checklist. That's why there's those gray columns there. So I'm highly motivated. You can count on it that this year, next year, rather, the first week in January, or the third week in January and the first week in March, I will be submitting a checklist. So I fill in those columns. But so what I've done is I went through here and I picked out, I think it's 16 or 17 species that show up almost all year round. Like they're on almost every checklist. Because I thought, well, that's a good sampling of backyard birds in Carpinteria, at least my backyard. So that's what I'm going to show now. Okay, I'm not sure if this is going to obscure things, but we won't worry about it. So, backyard birds in Carpinteria. A little bit of hieroglyphics you have to interpret behind the Zoom controls. So, yeah, this is going to bug me. Can I make this go away? Hide, well, I guess hide the video panel. Okay, goodbye, Zoom users. And hide floating meeting controls. There we go. Okay. So here's a bird I have in my backyard almost all year round. I mean, it is there all year round. I see it almost all year round. The Eurasian collared dove. And they're just they're non-native. They showed up there was another non-native species, the spotted dove. It looks a lot like it and has like a black patch on the back of the neck, little white spots in it. And that's what we used to have. When I was a kid learning to birdwatch in like the 1970s, that's what we had. That was the non-native dove we had in Southern California that was all around. I mean, besides rock doves, the sort of, park pigeons that everyone's familiar with are rock doves. But Eurasian, rather spotted doves in those days were the ones you saw everywhere. And then at a certain point in the last few decades, the Eurasian collared doves moved in and the spotted doves moved out. or were displaced and outcompeted. But nowadays, we have lots of Eurasian collared doves. And if you learn their vocalizations, it really adds to your ability to get a good checklist in your backyard in 10 minutes, because you'll just hear them, cooing. I'm not going to bother really doing all that. Because again, I'm running behind on the meeting, so I want to keep going. And there's an Anna's hummingbird. Yeah, the male is the big one, and then the female is the inset. And I apologize for having given subordinate treatment to the female hummingbird. Female birds are every bit as worthwhile and fun to look at as male birds. But come on, a male Anna's hummingbird is awfully cool to look at. And again, learn the vocalizations. In the last part of the meeting where I talk about, tools for beginner bird watching, I'm going to talk about the Merlin sound ID feature, which if you don't know about it, you should learn about it, because I think it is the most revolutionary thing to happen to bird watching in the last, 5 or 10 years. It's a really useful tool, whether you're an expert or a beginner or anywhere in between. It's just super, super useful. And then the other hummingbird that we have year round is Allen's hummingbird, where again, the male is the big picture and the female is in the inset. So the big difference you're going to see between the Allens and the Annas is, the Annas has no real brown to speak of on it. Like that one in the inset, that female in the inset photo, looks like it's got some brownish, but I think that's just like reflected light off the feeder. It's basically gray underneath with no real brown to speak of. And then in the case of the Allen's hummingbird, the female or immature males also look very much like this. They've got this little bit of brown on the sides, and it's on the sides of the tail as well, if you get a good look at the tail. And so if you see any of that kind of brownish color around here, you're probably looking at an Allen's hummingbird, unless it's during migration. So in the spring especially, but also in the fall to a lesser extent, we get rufous hummingbirds mixed in with the Allen's hummingbirds. And in keeping with my goal of not getting too deep into the weeds in the discussion, so I'm not going to talk about the whole issue of rufous hummingbirds versus Allen's hummingbirds. But the short version of it is, if you see a hummingbird that looks like this in Carpinteria, and it's springtime, generally speaking, it's probably safer if you're putting in an eBird list to say it is a Rufus/Allen's hummingbird, because it could be either one. And we do get a lot of rufous hummingbirds coming through in the springtime. But for like now, all the ones you see like that are probably going to be Allen's hummingbirds. Western gull. So I don't exactly have beachfront housing. But Western gulls, turns out, cruise over all of Carpinteria, right? And I'm kind of on the flyway between the marsh and the high school, so the Western gulls want to go up there and raid the dumpsters. So they come over my house a lot. And again, there are certainly more in-depth discussions to be had about gull identification. If you go to our website and look at our meetings archives, we have hours and hours of talk about gull identification. But generally, so an adult Western gull, which is what this is, it's a relatively big gull with relatively broad wings, and you see a lot of black on the underside of the wings, right? There's these black primaries and black in the secondaries through here. That's the only gull we have around here that's going to look like that. And in general, if you see a gull cruising over the inland parts of Carpinteria, there's a good bet that it's a Western gull. Although during migration, a lot of California gulls move through too. So talk about that in another meeting. Turkey vulture. Pretty hard to mistake, at least if you're close to it, although you often see them at a great distance. So, it looks like a big raptor, big hawk-like bird. It has a little bit of a dihedral, so a little bit of the wings kind of make a V, a shallow V when it's soaring typically, like this one is doing. So that's something you can look for. And just, I just think they're so cool to look at. I think some folks kind of look down on vultures because they eat dead animals. But, if they weren't eating the dead animals, there'd be a lot more dead animals along the sides of our roads. And they're just, I think, very cool birds. A lot of interesting fun facts about vultures. And we should do a meeting about turkey vultures. A future meeting, we will do turkey vultures because we've never done them before. Never, and talk about them specifically. So I can usually see a turkey vulture flying around from my backyard. Acorn woodpecker. Just a really fun bird. They're gregarious. They hang out in big groups. They make these granaries where they'll take a tree and they'll drill a bunch of holes and they'll stuff the holes full of acorns. So oak trees have this characteristic where they have, mast years where they have like big crops of acorns and just there's acorns, so many acorns, more than anything could eat. And then they have years where they don't have that, right? Or then there's long parts of the year where there aren't any acorns normally. So the acorn woodpeckers have this cool strategy that they'll just stuff trees full of acorns and then they have access to them throughout the year. And they're fun. They make this vocalization that sounds like they're kind of laughing and they sort of look like clowns, sort of very clown-like woodpeckers. And they hang out in groups. They're a lot of fun to watch. Black phoebe. So these are flycatchers, and they're probably the most common flycatcher we have around here. They're resident here. They nest under the eaves of houses. Have any of you had a black phoebe nest nearby where you can kind of see their whole cycle? It's pretty fun. They kind of dip their tail. It's a phoebe thing. They kind of perch and go, chip, chip, chip. And they do fly catching as a behavior where they perch on a prominent spot where they have a good view, and then they will fly out, they'll sally out, and they'll grab a flying insect out of the air, and then they'll fly back to the same perch again, which makes them just very fun to watch. And there are, we'll keep going. California scrub jay, as you see here, is a pretty recognizable bird. I think even if you're, even if you just started bird watching, you're going to notice these when they're around because they're loud and they're obvious and they're blue. They just do not look like any other birds we have around here. Highly intelligent. There's whole literature, scientific literature around these studies of bird intelligence that talk specifically about scrub jays as being really intelligent. Because they do a thing, they also like acorns. Like if you have peanuts at your bird feeder, they'll take the peanuts. It's sort of a substitute for the acorns that they've evolved to feed on. And they eat lots of other things too. But they cache it. So they come and they take if you've got, you put out 50 peanuts in your feeder and you come back in an hour and they're all gone. It's like you look at this, scrub jay like, okay, what did you do? Well, what they did was they cached them. They took those peanuts and they took them away and they hid them. And they hide them like one at a time. Like each peanut gets its own special hidey place, and they like tuck them under leaves and they put them here and there. And they remember where they hid them. And so they've done this study of can they really remember? Like, no, actually they do. They follow these scrub jays around and they keep track. They can remember I want to say thousands of locations, which is really quite impressive. And they have this other behavior that they've looked at in these studies that's kind of controversial, and I've talked about it before in other meetings because I think it's so fun. But they exhibit this behavior where there are studies where if the scrub jay knows that it's being observed when it's caching the peanut or the acorn or whatever, they will be more prone, they'll be more agitated, they'll be more prone to coming back and re-hiding it later. So, one interpretation of this is, well, they have a theory of mind. They have intelligence of such a scale that they are aware that there are other organisms out there that are independent entities that they're in competition with who they need to hide their nuts from because they were seen hiding it, so it'd be better to re-hide it. Which, in terms of human psychological development, human infants don't acquire a theory of mind until they get to a certain age. It's not an obvious thing, and not many animals that have what we would describe as intelligent behavior, not many of them exhibit a theory of mind on that level. So there's other, there's people who dispute that and say, no, they're just they're just agitated, you know, they don't have a mental model that there's something watching them. They just are like, oh, someone's watching me, I'm a little anxious, I'm gonna, you know, and re-hide as part of just general anxiety or something. It's kind of an odd argument. I think, like, I don't know what scrub jays are thinking, and I don't think anyone else knows what they're thinking. But they're very smart birds. Any way you slice it. There's a lot going on upstairs in the scrub jay. Another highly intelligent bird. It's the American crow. We have tons of them around here. This one actually tripped the rarity filters when I submitted it via eBird, because this was out at Scorpion Harbor on Santa Cruz Island. And out on Santa Cruz Island, they have ravens, but crows are quite rare. Well, there's been 1 or 2 crows that have been hanging out at the Scorpion campground for the last 6 months. So it always surprises visiting bird watchers who are going out there to see the island scrub jay, the island, you know, equivalent of the California scrub jay we were just looking at. They say, oh, there's a crow. And then the rarity filter in eBird pops up and says, well, we need documentation. We need you to prove you saw a crow. And they're like, it's a crow. What do you want me to prove? So this was a bird. I tried very hard to convince myself that this was a raven, but it was a crow. And we got a lot of those around here. And by the way, this is in taxonomic order. So if you're very familiar with thumbing through a field guide, you know, there's a specific order that the bird families are presented in that sort of reflects, they think, evolutionary history. So that's the order in which I'm going through these birds, because it happens to be the order that eBird histogram is displayed in. So oak titmouse, a fun bird. I remember when I was, again, back in the 1970s, when I was a young whippersnapper learning to birdwatch, I just thought titmouse was the most hilarious name for it. But nowadays, it's like, oh, yeah, that's just what it's called. But they're a lot of fun. They make a lot of different vocalizations. So I have found myself, as I've tried to get better at birding by ear, the oak titmouse is sort of one of my last challenges of like, what is that bird I'm hearing? I don't know what that is. And then I spent 15 minutes and I finally got a look and I'm like, it's an oak titmouse. I did not know they made that sound. Another fun little bird, the bush tit. Also quite hilarious to me as a young birder. Something about the word tit in a bird name. I just thought that was so funny. But in the old world, like, they have tits. It's a whole family, like what we call like chickadees, and they're called tits in England and Europe. Anyway, but this is the bush tit, which is tiny, tiny little bird. You can't really get a sense of scale from this photo. This is a female because she has the light iris. The male bush tit has an all dark eye. And they are just so cool. So again, talking about my backyard. So these days, we remodeled our house about 20 plus years ago. But before we did the remodel and I got a home office, I was working at home, but my home office was a corner of our bedroom. And so I would sit in the corner of the bedroom, and the corner of the bedroom looked out on our backyard, which is tiny. Like all these, you know, you get a very grand sense looking at that histogram, like, oh my gosh, the amazing environs of the Mesa Lane backyard eBird locations. Like, no, it's like, is the tiniest backyard possible, especially since we did our remodel, because we consumed most of what was there in the remodel. So now it's just a little strip that wraps around the house. But my bedroom window where I'd be working looked out on like 5 feet to the back wall, and there were some bushes and stuff there. And bush tit flocks would come through those bushes, and I always got so excited. And people in the like work chat or whatever would joke, like they always knew when the bush tits came through my backyard, because I had to tell everybody at work, like, oh my gosh, the bush tits are here. But they travel around in these flocks of maybe 10 or 20 birds. In fact, we got a photo later when we talk about Tom Laurel's backyard, where they have like 50 bush tits all sharing a bird feeder, a bird bath once. But and they're boisterous, and they're all calling to each other. They're all chipping, chip, and they're just fearless. You know, they're probably the smallest bird we have locally. Bob Hansen was a bird watcher. Maybe you know Sylvia.
Yes.
Back in the day, for many decades, he did the bird surveys in the Carpinteria Salt Marsh. He lived a block away from me. He has passed on, but he'd love to talk about bush tits, and he had this whole case he wanted to make to anyone who was willing to listen, that the hummingbird was not the smallest local bird, that the bush tit was a smaller bird than a hummingbird. And when you look at them, well, in terms of the space they occupy, hummingbirds are smaller. But Bob's argument was that they are denser and that the bush tit is all fluff and attitude and a long tail. And if you were to take away all the feathers and just weigh them, the bush tit is actually less massive than the hummingbird and is in fact our smallest local bird. I don't know if that's true or not, but in memory of Bob Benson, I wanted to mention that. But they are just super fun. And like I say, fearless, they will come right up to you. If you're in the bush that they're gleaning bugs from and you stand still, they'll just like 6 inches from your face. They're not phased at all. European starling. So another non-native species like the Eurasian collared dove that has moved in is the European starling, or if you're in Europe, the common starling. That's the same species. And I used to have a real bias against, I used to hate starlings. I mean, like, it was strong. Like, I disliked them. I thought they were ugly, and I thought the noises they made were ugly. And I'm not sure where it came from. I think it was maybe just, the bird books I was reading in the 1970s had harsh things to say about starlings. I mean, they do compete with native species for nest space. So they evict other birds from cavities they might want to use for nesting. And I mean, I don't know where I came from, but at a certain point in my life, I'm not sure how I became more enlightened, but I came to this realization that, I am in essence a non-native species too. Like, I didn't, people at least with the sort of cultural legacy that I carry with me did not evolve to live in this place. And I'd moved in and taken over, and I don't view that as some terrible moral transgression the way I was thinking of starlings. So I started paying more attention to them, and I decided starlings are actually pretty cool. I like starlings now. So this is more about me than about starlings. The starlings are just the same as they've ever been. They do get this cool thing where in the breeding plumage, their bill gets bright yellow. So if you see a starling out there now, I think this is the time of year when their bills are yellow. This is a non-breeding starling. Anyway, got any more, or is that the end? Oh, no, there's more. Oh, they're mockingbird. A bird I've always liked. I didn't have to come to like mockingbirds. I liked them from the outset. My neighbor 2 doors down has a bias against the northern mockingbird because the northern mockingbird likes to perch on Joni's chimney during the breeding season. And not so much this year, but in recent years, a few times it has happened that a male mockingbird, proclaiming its territory, has gone up on her chimney at 2 in the morning and sung for 45 minutes. And it just echoes through the house, and it's very aggravating if you're trying to sleep. They do like to sing. And their song is very cool. They're mimids, that is, they mimic other birds, hence the name mockingbird. And and if you start listening to mockingbirds, first off, you learn the basic pattern. So you're like, oh, this bird I'm hearing now, like, I've never heard this exact version of this song because they're always changing and incorporating new things. But the overall song is very recognizable. It's like the cadence of like, okay, it's going to do this phrase for like 4 or 5 seconds, and now it's going to do another phrase for 4 or 5 seconds. And there's certain kinds of phrases that it likes. It likes whistles, like certain other birds, it likes car alarms. I mean, and if you start listening to a mockingbird, especially as you get better at birding by ear, you start to be able to recognize what it's imitating, which can be really fun. You can be like, oh, now it's doing a scrub jay. Now it's doing a, I think it's fun. What's that? Yeah. They just, they imitate lots of things. Yet another non-native species. So, suburbia in general is a specialized kind of habitat. And as we have spread that habitat and expanded that habitat throughout the world, certain bird species have said, cool, we like this habitat, we'll go there. And house sparrow is one of the best examples. So, it's native to Northern Europe. English sparrow, I think, is what I used to call it in the old field guides. But and it's actually doing not that great, as I understand it, in England, where it's actually of some concern that their numbers are declining. But boy, have they been successful elsewhere. So if you look at their range map, they cover the globe everywhere humans have gone and created, sort of suburban type environments. House sparrows have gone with them. Also quite fearless, especially when there's, French fries or whatever to be had. You walk away from your fast food for 10 seconds, they will get in there and get some. House finch. So yeah, and the most common feeder bird in North America. So if you have a bird feeder with seeds in North America, you probably are going to get house finches. They're an interesting story where they have also spread as a result of suburbia. They are native, but their original range was more like in Mexico and the desert Southwest. And then they spread out into suburban environments. And the male again is in the big photo, and female, it's very similar in the inset, but she doesn't have the red coloration. And their coloration on the males is very variable. It's based on their diet. So some are brighter, some are less bright in terms of the red. Sometimes you will see a yellow house finch, like it's actually just full on yellow, and that's like it's been eating something that, I mean, I don't know the details. I'm sure there are people who do know the details, but I mean, you don't see them a lot. Like I see maybe a few every year that look that way. I mean, you're just looking at a lot of house finches, you'll spot the yellow ones mixed in with them. They also have a very pretty song. One of the first places that my wife and I lived together in Redondo Beach, I think it was. There was a vacant lot next door, and there were all these wild radishes going nuts in the vacant lot right by our windows, and they were full of house finches. Like 50 house finches would be in there feeding all day long, every day. And so we constantly heard house finch vocalizations, and I came to really like them. I know maybe it's the opposite of the mockingbird on the chimney. In fact, I just thought, oh, I could just lie here and listen to these house finches all day. And lesser goldfinch. So I haven't been talking about it, but as a bird watcher who's just getting started, it's really helpful to pay attention to the bird's beaks, because a lot of birds maybe have sort of similar plumage, similar color patterns, other species, but the beaks tend to be very specific. Like the beaks, like within a certain family of birds, birds don't have hands. They don't have forelimbs. They've given up their forelimbs for flight. They've turned their forelimbs into wings, which is great as an adaptation. And it's why birds are one reason why birds are so successful. They have this amazing mobility, but they've lost, they've lost the ability to use their forelimbs to like grab their food and manipulate it. So their beaks do that, and so their necks have become very limber. They have lots and lots of vertebrae, a lot more than a mammal does. They have like 20 plus vertebrae. And if you could take all the feathers away, which of course you wouldn't want to do, but if you did, like the vertebrae, the neck column of a bird is like this, very flexible kind of thing. And they can reach out, they can turn their head around, they can turn their head, 180 degrees or more, they can go in all different directions. And the beaks themselves have adapted to the particular kind of foods that they eat. So in the case of a goldfinch, they've got a relatively short beak that's kind of cone shaped, and they use it for crushing seeds. They like pull little seeds and they can crack them open. They can, like a little nutcracker, they can get into those seeds and eat them. Same thing with a house finch and a house sparrow. But a mockingbird, you'll notice, has a longer, thinner beak, right? So it's not doing so much of grabbing of little seeds and crushing them. It's probing for insects or fruits, or it's got a more generalized diet. It's more of an omnivore. Oh, I guess all of these birds are herbivores that I've been looking at here, but more varied diet, and that more general purpose beak is used for that. Bush tit, little beak. Oak titmouse, pretty smallish beak. It does this interesting thing where it will take a seed and it will put it down on where it's perched, and it'll stand on it. It'll hold the seed in place with its foot, and then it'll peck at it. So there's been times where I thought I was hearing a woodpecker pecking in a tree, and after sufficient research, I realized, oh no, I'm looking at an oak titmouse that has like a sunflower seed that it's pecking at. We're making negative progress. Let's go back. There's a goldfinch. Oh, and the last bird, California jelly, which again has that sort of seed-eating beak. It is in fact a sparrow, like it's in the sparrow family. Not called a sparrow, and it's bigger than most of the sparrows we have around here. but it's like a very big sparrow.
It's a common.
And we have lots of them, yeah. If you go to the thing on Saturday, along Santa Monica Creek, you will almost certainly see a California towhee. In fact, that's where I took this photo. I think that is on Santa Monica Creek where that towhee was. Alrighty, intermission, yay. So again, because I've used up a lot of time by being disorganized, I'm gonna try and maybe skip actually taking a pause here and just go right into part 2, and then we'll take a break after that, and then we'll go into part 3 after the break. So now we're gonna go to part 2, which is Tom and Laurel's. So, and let me see, I think I want to get the Zoom controls back, but I have no idea how to do that. All right, let's see if I can figure this out. There we go. Let's show the video panel. All right.
That was a
So,
Bush Stick party.
hello, yeah, so it's the Bush Tea Party. So Tom, I can hear your voice.
Yeah, that was a Bush Stick party. They were having a party.
Yeah, so this is in Tom and Laurel's backyard, up here near Carpinteria Creek. And as backyard bird watching venues go, this is fabulous. They have a fabulous backyard. Yeah, so I started counting bush tits in this photo. And I got up to like 53, I think. This is a house finch, but I think every other bird in here is a bush tit. And you can see they're just having a grand old time bathing in the bird bath. And Tom, are you still there?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Why the wire enclosure around the bird bath? What is that doing?
So the bush tits could land on it. No, only kidding. One day, Laurel and I watched a neighborhood cat come in and get a bird. So when that happened, we put the wire mesh around all our bird baths.
That is a slick setup. I'm sure the birds really appreciate it.
Yeah,
They
they
do.
really like them a lot.
Yep, they do.
Okay, I'm just going to step through a few of these, and then we'll look at your live video from your yard there.
Okay.
So yeah, here is a different hummingbird besides the 2 that I get in my yard. And I do once in a while get one of these at my yard, but Tom and Laurel get them a lot more. This is a black-chinned hummingbird. And it's kind of an accomplishment to get that little strip of that deep violet color along the lower edge of the gorget there. And you have to have the light just right. So congratulations, Tom or Laurel, whoever took this photo. Another beautiful bird. Yeah, Western tanager. So there's a male Western tanager, which in my yard, I can sometimes get, there's a big sycamore in my front yard. And if I stand in the right part of my backyard, I can add those birds to my list. And in the spring, during spring migration is when I have a good chance of getting a Western tanager. Someone else who appreciates the abundance of small edible wildlife in Tom and Laurel's backyard is this red-shouldered hawk. And I found this very impressive. Brody is exactly right. This is 2 adult male orioles of different species. That's a hooded oriole on the right and a Bullock's oriole on the left. That is quite exciting. Yeah, you can still, there's a few of them around, like, and there are hooded orioles in my neighborhood. Like they must be nesting not too far away.
Yeah.
But the bullocks I don't have in my neighborhood as much. But if you like certain like big cottonwoods and I mean what is it? Sycamores, big sycamores they like. Okay, so here again, 2 species, and this is a good example of the beak structure thing I was talking about, right? Because these, I mean, well, these birds are not that similar looking, but they're both small, greenish, yellowish, kind of blackish coloring. But the one on the left is a female lesser goldfinch, and the one on the right is a Townsend's warbler, a male Townsend's warbler. And you see that the Townsend's warbler has that narrower beak, which, you know, if you're just getting started, maybe doesn't jump out at you as much as like that those 2 beaks are so different. But as you do more bird watching and learn to look super carefully at the exact shape and size of the bird's beak, that's definitely a different family of bird on the right from on the left. Just based on the beak alone. Or hummingbirds. And Tom, I think you mentioned you like this photo because it shows that the hummingbirds can get along sometimes.
Yes. Sometimes we'll have 8 to 10 on 2 different feeders next to each other. So,
And I think that was the last of those slides. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the sharing of the presentation slides. And I'm gonna go back and maximize the Zoom window. And I think, what am I gonna do? I'm going to maybe spotlight your
okay.
back.
Okay.
So Tom, is that your video we're seeing, or is that Laurel running that camera?
Yeah, Laurel's running the camera. I'm standing next to it talking.
Okay.
And you can all hear me, right?
Can you guys hear Tom?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So why don't I begin?
Yeah, please do.
A couple of funny things. When you said acorn woodpecker, an acorn woodpecker came over to our feeder, started eating. You said a scrub jay and 2 scrub jays came over to look at us. Every bird you were saying, one would show up. So I think they were listening to you. In the last several years, we've had about 85 different species in this yard. And probably a big reason of that is where we back up to the Carpinteria Creek. And we also in the front of our house have a lot of bottle brush trees, which seems to attract a lot of birds and bees. We also have a couple of beehives here. Our yard is very messy, and that's not because I'm real lazy, but I am lazy, but it's because birds like messy yards. At least that's what we've read more and more when we're doing things for the birds. We have 4 water features. And as I told you, we put the fence up because we watched one of our neighbor's cats get a bird one day. So, right now we have a lot of Orioles here. So we have 5 to 6 feeders that feed both the hummingbirds and the Orioles. And they don't share feeders like those hummingbirds were sharing a feeder, but they will push each other off. And 2 to 3 of them are really just for the hummingbirds. And most of the time, only the hummingbirds go on those.
These are the, this one here, just for the hummingbirds. These are the Oreo and hummingbird feeders. And those are really good feeders because they're easy to clean.
So, and the Oreo and can get its bill into that feeder as well, of course, as a hummingbird. So,
And these cups,
Yeah, I was just gonna ask about this.
those are ant cups. We fill them with water so that the ants don't crawl up. We have lots of ants crawl up and get onto the feeders.
so our sugar water is 4 waters to 1 sugar. We don't put any coloring in it or anything. We make anywhere between 12 to 16 cups at a time and refrigerate them. And sometimes in the summer, we have to make a little more. July and September, we fill all the feeders daily because they're being emptied constantly. So in the rest of the year, we fill the feeders up every few days. Once a month. Oh,
What?
any questions? No?
Well, I would love to ask questions, but I also love, I mean, you've got your whole spiel. Why don't you give us all the quick overview? And then if you have, you could maybe do
Wanna go to Jelly?
a session of questions after.
Okay. And once a month, we clean the feeders, we put them in vinegar. We have jelly for the Oreos, and while we were standing out here while John was talking, the Orioles were constantly at the jelly feeders. They love jelly, and they love the cheapest jelly you could buy. You don't have to get expensive jelly. In fact, it's hard to find jelly. Who eats jelly anymore?
It's grape jelly.
It's grape jelly, that's true.
And we
Yeah.
actually once tried taking real grapes and grinding them up, but they did not like that. They only like cheap grape jelly.
So they're in glass bowls on the saucers, and at least once a week, we have to clean the bowls because they get a lot of poop in them. So the jelly, the Oreos, the tanagers, and orange crown warblers love the jelly. So let's see, where are we going?
Over here.
Oh, Niger seeds, yeah, that's right. We have two Niger seeds. We have two Niger seeds, which the who eats that? The
Lesser gold.
lesser goldfinches, and lately the house finches have been eating it. They normally don't eat it during the year, but they have been eating it. And did you see a lesser goldfinch ask, "What are you
Oh, the
doing
lesser
here?
goldfish.
It's time for me to eat." And then, and right in front of us is we made this log into a peanut butter feeder, and we'll get a downy woodpecker. We get the grosbeaks love peanut butter. We put cornmeal in it, which is much healthier than straight peanut butter. And the scrub jay.
The orange crown. Actually, all warblers really liked this. We had a Tennessee Nashville warbler on these. We had orange crown,
Yeah, I think that.
Wilson's.
Oh, yeah,
They all
we have
seem to
the,
like
and
peanut
the-
butter.
And the Townsends.
Yep.
The Townsends too. Lately though, the crow's been liking it. So a crow comes in at night, takes in his mouth, goes to the bird, the fountain, cleans it up, and then takes off with it. So,
We'll take that down at the end of June because it gets too hot and the peanut butter gets rancid. So we have another log that we're now trying no melt suet in it to see how they like that for the summer.
okay, let's go to, okay, we're going
One more spot.
one more spot, but just so you know, I throw a lot of bird feed, the non-shelled mix, bird feed mix on the ground, and the birds love that. It's thrown on the ground every day.
Can you hear the red shoulder?
That's a red-shouldered hawk screaming in the background.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, screaming a lot. We get, the red shoulder comes in, and lately the Coopers has been flying in, trying his luck on getting a bird. Oh, there goes the red shoulder. Red shoulder just went by. Down the creek.
So we have a platform feeder that we put hulled sunflower seeds and millet in. And then in the background, we have a sunflower seed feeder. And you can see the other logs sort of in the middle, and then we have another water feature down there.
So,
And this is what the creek's in the back here.
so that's why you're hearing the red shoulder hawk. Something that we're really cautious of and careful is house finch eye disease. So if we see a house finch with this eye disease, we will stop feeding them and that particular feeder in the area for a couple of days or more. So, okay, any questions?
All right, so questions for Tom and Laurel about their feeders or their backyard? I think the group is in awe of your backyard, which I can relate to, because the first time I saw your backyard, I was in awe. So I have a question. How much time, honestly, how much time per day is going into like feeder maintenance and cleaning and restocking?
In the summertime, when we have, like right now, we're starting to get all the Oreos that have fledged. And by the end of the summer, we sometimes have like 15 to 20 Oreos. And also all our hummingbird feeders are filled. I mean, we have many,
20.
yeah, hummingbirds. So probably, like we said, we fill every feeder every day. and we clean every feeder before we fill it. Once a month, I usually clean them with the vinegar and the water, but I have extra feeders now. So if they start getting dirty, I'll let them soak and then put out another feeder.
Yeah.
So it probably takes us in the busy season, maybe a couple hours. First thing in the morning, we do that. Sometimes at night, then we'll make the sugar water, put it in the refrigerator, because we always have at least 2 to 3 probably quarts of sugar water available.
Well, I've had bird feeders off and on through the years, and I don't have anything like your commitment to it. So I'm in awe, not just of the end result, but also what I understand is behind that end result, the amount of effort you put into it. And on behalf of the birds, since they can't speak, I make the expression of gratitude. But yes, you're getting a round of applause that I'm sure if the birds hadn't evolved wings, they would be happy to clap for them.
It's fun. It's fun. I
mean, it's
spend many
great.
mornings just listening to the birds. I go outside and sit for 20 minutes and they just talk to me.
Yeah, and again, I can say, from personal experience, the times I've been fortunate enough to be in your yard, sitting in your yard or sitting in your room that faces on the yard with the big glass windows, it is bird watcher heaven. Like there are birds to watch at all times.
It is, so,
Well, people are welcome to come if they'd like to. It's easier. I mean, when we bird now, we really bird from inside because the birds, when we come outside, really leave. Or if anyone wants to come and look at any of the feeders or anything, just get in touch with us.
Okay, yeah, another question?
What do they do about the rats and the squirrels? Didn't they just let them?
So the question is, what do you do about rats and squirrels, or do you just let them feed away too?
we let the
See,
squirrels.
the squirrels eat on the ground, but also see all of these. On all our feeders, we have domes like this
Huh?
that actually prevent all of the squirrels and the rats from getting onto the feeders.
Yeah,
Since really the rains, we used to have a lot more rats, but for some reason, it doesn't appear that we have as many rats as we used to. We pick up, under the Niger seed in the sunflower seeds, we'll pick that up after a while when it gets really thick.
Yeah.
But the dome things really keep the rats and the squirrels from getting onto, see the oak titmouse
What's it, Mom? On the peanut butter.
on the peanut butter?
the peanut butter log. Yeah, it's a little
Yep.
small idea, but yeah, I can see something on there.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, any other questions? Yeah,
Besides, the cats, neighborhood cats, and probably hawks, what are the predators that they find?
so are there any other predators you've noticed besides the cats and the local raptors, the local hawks? Do you have any other predators taking advantage of your abundance of tasty birds?
No,
No.
that's
No.
really it. I mean, we had a Cooper's hawk fly through this afternoon, and the red tail is a resident around here. And there's people in our neighborhood who let their cats run free, and we've tried to keep them out, but they don't.
We do pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we sort of spray them with water now.
The neighbors tell us, spray them with water.
So the neighbors are okay with that. They're like spraying the cat with water is fair game as far as they're.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
they
get a
know.
super soaker. Something with some range. Okay, well, thank you again very much. It was really fun to share this with you. You're getting a round of applause.
you're
Well,
welcome.
okay, thank you.
See you soon.
Okay,
We'll see you
yeah,
soon.
come down here and have some of the zucchini bread before it's all gone.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. So we are officially on break. So I encourage everyone to, if you're at home, you can go get a refreshment. We're going to be enjoying our refreshments for a few minutes here. And let's say 5 minutes, we'll resume. And
Sounds good.
I'm gonna reorient this so you have the fun of seeing who is here in person. And I will mute myself. How do I do that? Okay, so if I can, I know people are having fun meeting and talking, but is it okay if we resume the meeting? And we'll get through this last part really quick, and then you can hang and talk some more. Yeah. Tom and Laurel, my understanding is Tom and Laurel are on their way here, so they can be here in person. Oh, they're here now. Oh, great. You know what, can we do? Hey, Laurel? Hey, Laurel? Could you, is the light switch back there for the lights in the room? It's kind of dark. No, not there? Maybe over here? Oh, wait, I got a switch. Maybe this. That's fine. Here we go. Okay. Okay, so thank you, everyone, and thank you again, Tom and Laurel. We can give you our thanks in person now. That was really fun seeing your backyard. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the last part. Let me make this go away. How to do this? Hide video panel and hide floating meeting controls. There we go. Okay. So if you want to go bird watching, and I suspect everybody here already knows pretty much everything I'm going to say, but maybe there'll be somebody who watches this video in the future. So I'm going to share a little bit about how to do bird watching, just from the bare minimum, just getting started perspective. So you're excited about all these birds you've seen, you want to go bird watching, what do you need to have to do it? And I'm going to suggest that you really kind of need to have a pair of binoculars. Like, technically you don't really have to have them, but it adds so much, to your ability to get yourself, in effect, very close to the birds and really see them and really see what's going on with them. So, oh yeah, I should have been getting power, but this thinks I am not getting power, and that would be bad if our meeting suddenly stopped. Oh, I needed your help, Brody. I had to press the button so that there was power. Okay, so binoculars. Now, this is a nice pair of birding binoculars, these Vortex Diamondback binoculars. I don't actually even know the whole product line at Vortex. Diamondback is either less expensive than the binoculars from them that I've had, or more expensive. I think maybe the Diamondback is the lower end of the range. Doesn't matter. But this is like a nice pair of birding binoculars. But any binoculars will work. Like if you want to get started bird watching and you don't have, these nice birding binoculars, but you've got just an old pair of binoculars kicking around, that's perfectly good. Use your old binoculars you have kicking around. But at some point, if you want to do it more and you find yourself enjoying it, it's definitely a good investment to make in a pair of binoculars. So when you're shopping for binoculars, their specs are quoted as 2 numbers with an X in between. So these, I think, are 8x42s. That's how you read, like 8x42, where the 8 is the magnification, and good bird watching binoculars typically have magnifications of 7 or 8 or maybe 10. And that's just, how much the image is magnified. So if I'm looking through a pair of 8-power binoculars at a bird that's, 80 feet away, it's going to look to me as if I were looking at it with the naked eye 10 feet away. And that gives you an idea of just, how well you'll be able to see these distant birds. It really is. There's a reason why bird watchers are always carrying binoculars with them, because it really does work. So in terms of the power, I use 8-power binoculars. 7-power binoculars are fine. Especially for someone who's just getting started in bird watching, I would maybe suggest you not use 10 power, or at least, if that's what you have, sure, go ahead and use it. What you'll find with 10 power is, yes, the bird is magnified more, so you get a closer look at it. But it's also a little harder to hold the binoculars steady in your hands. Like you'll see more like magnified movement just from the shakiness of your hand holding. And the other thing is that the field of view will be smaller, right? And along with magnifying the image more, what you're actually seeing when you look through it is a smaller piece of the world. And that makes it a little harder to aim the binoculars right at the bird. And especially for someone starting out, I think one of the real challenges is getting the bird in the binoculars, right? Because you look and you see the bird and you raise the binoculars to look at the bird and you see some leaves and branches. You don't see the bird, right? And and you can get better at that. It's, it's a practice kind of thing, but 8 power or 7 power binoculars make that noticeably easier. You have a wider field of view, so you have a better chance that the bird will be in there. Your aim doesn't have to be as precise to see the bird when you look through the binoculars. Again, it's a practice thing. Like something I found is really helpful, especially if the bird is kind of in a big mass of foliage or something, is try and pick a landmark that's going to be easier to find than the bird itself. Like there's a big prominent branch, or there's a big gap in the foliage. You can see this patch of sky, or just something that's going to be easier to get in your binoculars. And then, say, okay, so the bird's just down into the left of that patch of sky. Find the patch of sky, and then move down into the left to find the bird. Little tricks like that can be helpful. So anyway, but that's the power, 7, 8, 10. The second number is the diameter of the objective lens, that is the lens that's away from your eye, farther away from your eye, in millimeters. So these that I'm holding are 8 by 42, and 42 millimeters is a pretty popular size, pretty popular diameter for the objective lens on birding binoculars. 7 by 35 is quite popular. 7 by 50 is also out there. What you find with the larger objective lens, so say a 50 millimeter objective lens, is the binoculars themselves get bigger and heavier, which is more for you to carry around. What you get from that is it gathers more light. You get more, especially if you're birding in dim conditions, like really early or late in the day. Larger diameter, a bigger second number in your binoculars, bigger objective lens will give you a brighter image. And I actually know bird watchers who have multiple binoculars, like golfers with different clubs, right? They have their 8 by 42s for just going around the day, but then they've got their 7 by 50s for the really dim light, and they'll switch them out. I don't know, use whatever you have. Is there a question? Someone just accidentally speaking? Okay, we'll keep going.
Giggling.
I know it's not because of me, because I'm not that funny. So one other thing I will mention is to be a little bit of a Vortex commercial. I have Vortex binoculars. And the thing that I really love about Vortex binoculars, they're not the most expensive around, but they're not super cheap. I mean, I think they're good value, but they are they have pricier binoculars in their product line. But what they have that I really love is they have this ridiculous warranty where they will fix or replace your binoculars for anything other than outright theft. Like if you don't have the binoculars anymore, you're out of luck. But if you have even like completely ruined binoculars, like on their website, they've got pictures of like, oh, they left them on the roof of their car and drove off, and by the time they got it back, it was just destroyed. They will fix that. They will replace it. So these are the binoculars. Then these days they're my backup binoculars, which means they're actually my wife Linda's binoculars. She gets my hand-me-downs binocular wise. So, but I'm very envious because I really like these binoculars. So I used these for many years. Like when I was really getting into bird watching recently, and I, was just birding every day throughout Santa Barbara County, and really getting, these are the binoculars I used. And the mistake that I made was I was not particularly scrupulous about my cleaning regime. So I want to talk to you about cleaning your binoculars. The best advice about cleaning your binoculars is don't clean your binoculars. I mean, yes, clean them when you need to, but be very aware of the fact that every time you clean your binoculars, there's a significant risk you're going to scratch the coatings. And so these nice birding binoculars, one of the things that makes them so good is these coatings they have on the lenses. And every surface is coated with these special coatings that cut down glare and just make them perform better. And the coatings on the outer surfaces of the lenses are particularly vulnerable to scratching. And at the point when they've become sufficiently scratched, you start to see a real noticeable drop off. Like if you're looking at a bird that has a bright light behind it, like it's between you and the sun, like you obviously don't want to look directly at the sun with binoculars because that will give you eye damage that will affect that you won't be able to fix. It's not a good thing. But even just looking near the sun at a bird, if you have scratched lenses, you'll get a really noticeable washing out of the image. Like the image will get very hazy and poor quality. And it doesn't take much to scratch the lenses. So if you're going to clean your binoculars, it's good to have, a whole sequence. You want to like blow on them first to get any loose stuff off that you can get off. If you have a lens cleaning brush, that is really soft brushes, brush the lens with the lens cleaning brush to get anything you can get off that way. And then go ahead and wipe it, moisten it and wipe it. The mistake I made was I was using these special lens cleaning cloths, and I thought, oh, well, this is fine, that's going to be fine, but I wasn't really cleaning the cloths. So over, months and months of usage, they were accumulating grit, and I'm just happily rubbing away at my binoculars. So I ended up with some pretty scratched lenses. And I wrote to Vortex, I said, I know you have this warranty, and they were like, this was totally my fault. Like the binoculars are fine, but and I started listing, gave them a picture of the scratches on the lenses, and I'm really noticing it. Like, could I pay to have them recoated, and they just said, oh, no, here's your shipping coupon. They paid the shipping, I sent it in, and they sent them back. I'm pretty sure these are actually brand new binoculars. I don't think they even fixed the old ones. I think they just gave me new ones. But I'm a big fan of their warranty. So that was a long commercial for Vortex binoculars. So they obviously got their money's worth for fixing my binoculars. Okay, so besides binoculars, the other thing that I've always said in talking to bird watchers who are just starting out is, well, you need a field guide. You need something to help you identify the birds. I'm not sure that's true anymore. So I think for my next thing I'm going to suggest, once you've got your binoculars, get the free Merlin app. If you have a phone that you can install apps on. Merlin is an app that's free. It's from the Cornell lab, the same people who run the eBird project. You don't have to use eBird to use Merlin. And it has a couple of really cool features that will help you identify birds. I'm just going to step through it. So one of them is you can use it as a guide to identify a bird. So you're out in the field, you're looking at a bird, or you're in your backyard, in keeping with our theme, you're looking at a bird, and you go through this process, and it has 5 questions it wants you to answer. So the first question is, where are you? And again, if you have a smartphone with GPS, you just hit the little current location button and it knows right where you are. Or you pick a city on a map or whatever. It needs to know roughly where you are. But that's very quick and easy. Step 2, when did you see the bird? What was the date? So again, if it's today, you hit the little reset to today button and you're good. Okay? But it needs, because that's the thing that's wonderful about Merlin, is it knows what birds are around at different times of year. What size was the bird? And it doesn't have to be super precise. It's just like, well, there's a little sparrow on the left and there's a big goose on the right. Just hit the button that corresponds to roughly the size of the bird you saw. Okay? And what were the main colors? Again, you don't have to get super detailed, like, oh, it had a supercilium that looked like this. No, it's just like, it was black. It was brown. It was, or up to 3 colors. It was brown with some yellow, or whatever. So you pick those and you go to step 5. And what was it doing? When you saw it, was it eating at a feeder? Was it swimming or wading? Was it on the ground? Was it in trees or bushes? Fence or wire, soaring or flying? So you answer those 5 questions and it will suggest birds to you. And again, it knows what birds are around and it will show the most common ones that satisfy all your criteria first. So instead of having to go through, 400 pages of a field guide, you just look at 3 or 4 different birds, right? And this is the detail view. There's also a list view. But you look through those photos and maybe you see a bird that looks just like your bird, Yahtzee, you found your bird. So I think this is a great way to get started with identifying birds. And, if you get into it, there are going to occasionally be rarities, right? They're rare, but they do occur. And then this is not going to necessarily get you there. And you're going to want to get that field guide that I'll talk about in a minute. But this is great for getting started. So this other feature they added to Merlin just in the last year or 2 is Merlin Sound ID. And I was talking a little bit about this before the meeting started, but I think this is the most revolutionary thing to hit bird watching in recent years that I've seen. Because what they're doing is they're using AI, and AI is all the rage these days, right? Like ChatGPT. And birders got exposed to the AI revolution a little bit earlier than the people who got all excited about ChatGPT, because we've been seeing this for a year. And what they do is they take all the bird recordings that they have identified in the Macaulay library. If you get into eBird, you can upload recordings of birds that you hear. They have millions of bird recordings. They train the computer, they have the computer go through all of those recordings. and study them, analyze them all and map out the relations. Actually convert them to visual representations, and then they analyze the visual representations. Turns out AI is better at analyzing the sonograms, the visual version of it. And then they had experts go through and mark out, oh, this is this species, this is this species. And so they trained the AI. So when you see this kind of squiggle in the sonogram, it's this, and the AI learned from that. So now what you can do is you hit this button out in the field and it starts listening, and you can see a little sonogram will scroll by up here that shows the sounds as they come in. And then it will suggest birds to you. And it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Birders who bird by ear, you can tell if you're looking at a lot of eBird checklists, you can tell the birders who are birding by ear because they have like twice as many species in the same amount of time as the people who are not birding by ear. And what this does is it democratizes that. Everybody can bird by ear now if they use Merlin Sound ID. Now it's not infallible, and it's very important that you not just view it as an oracle that is always right, because it is sometimes wrong. In fact, when I took this screenshot on my phone, I played the California Towhee vocalizations on eBird's site for the species page for California Towhee. And there was a wren tick in the background, which it picked up and heard, which I thought was cute. And then it got California Towhee, California Towhee. And then I started playing these California Towhee calls, and I said, oh, it's a song sparrow. Well, it wasn't. It was a California Towhee. And a song sparrow and a California Towhee can have, I guess, a similar chip note. So don't believe everything the AI tells you. AIs are prone to what we in the chat engineering team prompt engineering people working with ChatGPT and other AIs refer to as hallucinations. The AI will hallucinate. It will confidently suggest something to you that is not correct.
When you review your list, you go, no.
Yeah. So definitely, it's great to go out in the field and just have, the Merlin Sound ID running, and it'll suggest things. And even me, I'm pretty tuned into the birds I'm hearing in the field. It will suggest things I haven't noticed. And a lot of the time it's because that thing is audible and I just didn't notice it. But it's also sometimes that it's misidentifying something. So yeah, no question?
I was up on the Franklin Trail one day, sitting up on Frank's bench, and I was hearing a lot of different birds, and so I turned on Merlin, and boy, it's just started making this massive list. And then I realized he's listening to the mockingbird.
Oh,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I encourage people to listen, to use Merlin Sound ID and definitely pay attention to its suggestions, but verify, Yeah, get a look at the bird and see if that's really what it was. And then finally, field guide. So, you know what, let me go grab my visual aid.
Hi, Tristine.
Okay, so a field guide, back in the day, when I was a kid learning birdwatch, you had to have this because otherwise you had nothing. Now you've got Merlin and other tools, but it's still good to have the field guide. And I just like field guides, so I kind of collect them the way I collect bird lists, But it's very useful because it will, it'll show you a lot more detail. Like Merlin will suggest, oh, you had a black phoebe, but it won't show you all the different, behavioral things or how it looks in flight, or how does the juvenile look? It's got these brownish marks on the wings that the adult does not have. A good field guide will show you lots of different looks. If you have, like Merlin will suggest a bird and show you a single photo. Right? Well, that's what one of those birds looked like. But birds don't all look the same, even when they're, all members of the same species, right? Males and females look different, young and old look different. Sometimes they look different at different times of the year. They have breeding plumage and non-breeding plumage. And there's just individual variation, right? There's a lot of variety. And a good field guide will help you decode that. But that's, again, for when you get obsessed and you keep doing it and keep doing it. You're like, wow, I really want to know more. Like, what are all those gulls down at the beach? Well, get a field guide or get a specialty guide just to gulls, a big encyclopedia of just gull photos. But that's basically it, I think. Yes, that is the end of this talk. I'm going to stop the share. So it looks like I've driven almost everyone away. Actually, there are more participants in the meeting. Just a lot of people have their video off, so that's good. But any questions or comments or any last minute discussion? Yeah, Tom.
Oh, I
Sylvia.
was just gonna say, if you haven't heard about it, there's this great game that's out, it's called Wingspan. And it is so much fun, and it gives all this fabulous, and it's easy to play. It looks daunting at first, but once you get it set up, it's really easy. But each card gives you these really interesting facts about the bird, like Clark's grebe was named after like Lewis and Clark, or Clark, you know. So it's Wingspan, it's called Wingspan, and it's fabulous. Oh.
Yes. So for those on Zoom, if you couldn't hear that, Sylvia is sharing how fun the board game Wingspan is. I have actually brought up, so I'm fairly obsessed with the board game Wingspan. And I've actually suggested to Linda, my wife, who is not in the meeting. So I guess I should be careful how I phrase this. But you know, she is my sounding board. You know, I'll go to Tom and Laurel once I get past the Linda test. You know, if she thinks an idea for a meeting is a good idea, then I ask Tom and Laurel, and if they all agree it's a good idea, then it's probably a good idea. So I have proposed a Wingspan specific meeting of Carpinteria Birdwatchers. I don't know if that would work or not. Maybe that would have to be a different group. We could have a Wingspan player community. I don't know. We'll talk about it. As I mentioned at the beginning, I don't remember if this was on the video or not, but we're going to be taking a break for the next 2 months. We won't have a meeting in July and we won't have a meeting in August. Do plan to return in September. But during that gap, we're also going to be sending out a questionnaire or to the mailing list to gather opinions on like different ideas for future meetings and outings and sort of general direction. Do we want to continue to meet in person? Do we want to continue to meet online? Do we want to continue to do both? Again, I'll probably get better at doing both at the same time. Today was not a great example. I was a little disorganized. But those are all options, and those are all, I think, worth thinking about. So look for that in the next couple of months. We'll get that out. Yes, Tom.
One thing that we didn't follow and I didn't talk about.
Oh, you know what, Tom? Why don't you let me do this? I'm gonna go. Nee, 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 nee. So can you come up here and talk so the people in the Zoom can hear you as well?
Okay, one of the things I wanted to make sure that we used to have a lot of bird collisions into our windows. Yeah. So we have, I mean, if you look at our windows now, first of all, if you look at the outside, it looks like we have the shades down everywhere because we have this white film on it, and that works pretty well. And then we have some other stuff all of us. Yeah, the decal, and that works. Every so often, if they can see through one window to another, and they see outside, every so often they hit it. So then we have to move the decals around. But I thought it was very important to tell you that we, that we have that. And nothing else that was very important.
Okay, anything else? Any other feedback, commentary? Everyone in the meeting want to say hi to everybody at home?
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Nori. We're living in Kauai in a 4th floor condo, and I have sort of accidentally found out how wonderful an iPhone camera can be in observing birds.
So you're talking about like you put a separate attachment on the phone, so you're
No, actually, I just hold up the phone and then I, just get the window wide open and it puts the bird closer.
neat. Yeah, and in fact, I didn't show it, but the Merlin app has a feature where you can also give it a photo, and it will try to identify the bird in your photo.
Oh, great.
Okay, well, any other input? Last chance to.
Thank you, that was great.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.